AstraZeneca, Novartis, Bristol Myers Squibb, Johnson and Johnson and Amgen are all heading into Munich for what's shaping up to be the biggest cardiology conference on the calendar, the European Society of Cardiology Congress, ESC Congress 2026, running August 28th through the 31st. More than 30,000 cardiologists, researchers and journalists from over 150 countries are expected to show up in person, and organizers say this year's meeting pulled in a record number of late-breaking trial submissions, with 12 dedicated hotline sessions set to reveal primary results from 59 separate pivotal trials. On top of the trial data, ESC is also releasing brand new guidelines on heart failure, cardiac rehabilitation, and the combination of cardiovascular disease and chronic kidney disease, along with the fifth universal definition of myocardial infarction, developed jointly with the American College of Cardiology, the American Heart Association, and the World Heart Federation. This year's meeting also carries a major spotlight on artificial intelligence in cardiology. Cytokinetics is walking into Munich with maybe the single most anticipated readout of the whole week. Cytokinetics already announced positive topline results back in May for its trial called ACACIA-HCM, testing its drug aficamten against placebo in patients with symptomatic non-obstructive hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, a form of thickened heart muscle disease that's never had a clear positive phase 3 result before. Cytokinetics's aficamten hit both of its primary goals, meaningfully improving how patients felt and functioned day to day, and improving how much oxygen their bodies could actually use during peak exercise, across more than 500 patients. Munich is where cardiologists finally get the full data set, the imaging details, and the secondary analyses behind that headline win. AstraZeneca and its partner Ionis are bringing a very different kind of story to Munich. AstraZeneca and Ionis's trial, CardioTT-Transform, tested the drug eplontersen against placebo in more than 1,400 patients with transthyretin amyloid cardiomyopathy, the largest trial ever run in that disease. Eplontersen missed its primary goal of reducing cardiovascular death and recurrent cardiovascular events. But AstraZeneca and Ionis did find a real signal in patients taking eplontersen as a standalone therapy without a background stabilizer drug, and cardiologists in Munich will be picking through those subgroup results closely to figure out exactly where this class of drug still fits. Bristol Myers Squibb and Johnson are bringing a cautionary tale. Bristol Myers Squibb and Johnson stopped their Phase 3 trial, Librezia ACS, early last year after an interim analysis found their drug milvexian was unlikely to reduce major cardiovascular events in patients who'd recently had a heart attack or unstable angina, even though more than 14,000 patients had already been enrolled. No new safety problems turned up. Bristol Myers Squibb and Johnson are still running two other trials in the same Librezia program, one in atrial fibrillation and one in stroke prevention, both expected to report later this year. So Munich will be an important gut check on whether this entire new class of blood thinners still has a future anywhere. Novartis is showing up in Munich, with arguably the deepest bench of any single company at the meeting. Novartis recently acquired the biotech Tourmaline Bio, specifically to get its hands on pasibkitug, an anti-inflammatory antibody that already showed deep, long-lasting drops in a key inflammation marker called hsCRP in kidney disease patients at high cardiovascular risk in the TRANQUILITY trial, and Munich will bring an expanded look at that data. Novartis is also presenting late-breaking results from VICTORION-CHALLE, a head-to-head trial pitting its PCSK9 drug Leqvio against the oral drug bempedoic acid on getting patients to their cholesterol targets, alongside additional data on its factor XI blood thinner abelacimab from the AZALEA-TIMI-71 study. Amgen and AstraZeneca round out the pharma heavy hitters. Amgen's cholesterol drug evolocumab is the centerpiece of the AMUNDSEN trial, testing whether giving it to heart attack patients immediately, before their artery opening procedure even happens, gets more patients to aggressive cholesterol targets than waiting until after discharge. And AstraZeneca has a second major program in Munich beyond eplontersen, LUMINARA, its Phase 2b trial of AZD5462, a first-of-its-kind oral drug designed to ease the heart's workload without speeding up heart rate in patients with chronic heart failure. Beyond the pharma-sponsored trials, Munich will also feature SDARE, a nearly 10,000 patient trial out of Australia testing whether a daily statin actually extends healthy, disability-free life in adults 70 and older, and PRESC1-SEMI, a nearly 68,000 patient study testing a fast, 1-hour blood test protocol for ruling heart attacks in or out in the emergency room. Between the guideline releases, the AI Spotlight, and 59 hotline trials from companies like AstraZeneca, Novartis, Bristol Myers Squibb, Johnson and Johnson, Amgen, Cytokinetics and Ionis, ESC Congress 2026 is shaping up to move the needle on how cardiologists treat everything from thickened heart muscle to clogged arteries to failing kidneys. That is the story of AstraZeneca, Novartis, Bristol Myers Squibb, Johnson and Johnson and Amgen headline ESC Congress 2026's Hotline Cardiology trials in Munich. Add your perspective in the comments, share this story with a colleague, and subscribe for the next Conference Hype narrative.